Puma Pants doing cat donut on my lap. He was very calm and peaceful. Now we got some tail swish. We'll see where that goes. There's so much to talk about this week, and so I'll just do my best to take it in bite-sized chunks. And I would pray that something would come out of my mouth that um, might be of interest or benefit to my friends. And I was listening to the best podcast over the weekend. There's so much good stuff on the interwebs, and there's so much that's not. But um, occasionally, when I'm disciplined, I'll listen to something that's good for me. You gonna bite me? Maybe. Anyway, I was listening to a couple guys talk about the psychology, the states of mind behind uh, one particular story in the Bible, and it's the story of the rich man who couldn't sacrifice his money. And it's one of the most interesting stories, if we might say, that Jesus, being infinite consciousness, a young man came up and said, "Hey, Jesus, I got all the money in the world, but I'm completely miserable. Can you help me?" And so Jesus, like the best life coach that's ever lived, goes to work and starts to question him as to, are you following the commandments? Are you being good? And the young man says, by all means, I've followed all the laws of Moses. I've honored my parents. I've done the right thing. Uh, and I'm still miserable. And finally, Jesus just says, well, you're just going to have to, after some interrogation and some questions, Jesus says, well, in your case, in your specific case, you're going to have to sell everything and just follow me completely. And the young man's countenance falls, and he's terribly sad because he finds the thing in himself that he's unwilling to do. No matter all the good that he's done in his life, there's one thing that he won't sacrifice. And so that's a theme this week, is the word sacrifice. And who even likes that word, right? Sacrifice. But when we think about sacrifice as giving up the lower for the higher, then it makes sense. Another way of thinking about sacrifice is we're willing to make short-term effort and go through short-term pain for medium and long-term harmony and joy and life and well-being and improvement. Now, sacrifice is a great theme throughout all world scriptures. Cain and Abel, that story is one of the brothers would sacrifice well and one of them wouldn't. And we all know what happens in that story. But the reason I bring that up is that we all have to sacrifice. If you're good at your job, if you're a good parent, if you're a good person, you've had to make an almost endless series of sacrifices. And sometimes the burden seems too much. Maybe sometimes we feel like the young man in that biblical story of like, man, do I have to give up everything? And yet the reason I wanted to bring it up today is in this conversation I was listening to yesterday between these two great thinkers. They used a phrase that I've used my whole life. It occurred to me first, and I'm kind of pissed at these guys for stealing my stuff. They must be going onto my YouTube channel. Damn it. But anyway, they talked about when enough sacrifice has been made, then something comes along called alignment. Alignment. Now, I'm a yoga teacher by trade, and we teach alignment. You get into these various poses, warrior pose and down dog, and we're making all these micro alignments in our bodies. What are we aligning ourselves with? We're aligning ourselves with nothing less than love and light and truth. And after a particular period of sacrifice, alignment comes to each and every one of us. And then comes what I call the upward spiral. We just are suddenly caught up in this upward spiral of well-being. And it doesn't feel like a sacrifice anymore. Work becomes play. And we know people whose jobs have been aligned perfectly with what they love the most. I often very much admire those people, the artists, the athletes, the musicians, whoever it is, the entrepreneur whose work has become the most outrageous, glorious play in the universe. And then there's a quality of life called good and getting better. And I call that the upward spiral. And I find I can honestly say my life right now is good and getting better. And that's a good thing. That just means there's no upward limit to how high we can go. So if we're sacrificing, if we're suffering right now, I think we can remember the faith that remembers we're moving into alignment when, through our sacrifice, our intelligent giving up of the lower for the higher, we get caught up in a tractor beam, if you will, of well being. And then, wowee, there's no upper limit to that glory. So, a topic for the week: what we're willing to sacrifice. Are we like the young man in the Bible? There's something we won't give up. We just love it too much. Or are we willing to do what we need to do in the short term for the long term benefit? All righty. Thanks, you guys. See you tomorrow.